And when it ends, and it will end when it ends, you know, they want it to end immediately. And I just looked at a little chart. World War I, 4 years and 3 months. World War II, 6 years. Korean War, 3 years. Vietnam, 19 years. Iraq, 8 years. I've been at this for 5 months, okay? 5 months. I would have quickly won Vietnam. If I were president, I would have won Iraq in the same amount of time that we won, because essentially we've won here, okay? I mean, people can play, but the Democrats can say, well, we should have done better. No matter what, if I had done it in a week, they would have said, we should have done better. Look at Venezuela. I got it done in 45 minutes. It was basically 45 minutes. And by the way, a country with a very powerful army, and we conquered it in a day. But let's be kind, we basically took it in 45 minutes. We took it during the attack in 45 minutes, but Mr. President, and they would say, I'm surprised they haven't said it. You should have done it in 30 minutes, you took too long. You know? No.
That's part of a statement made in an interview with Donald Trump, where both the White House and the Iranian regime are exchanging threats as the end of the ceasefire approaches. Right now, it must be around 11 at night. Let's see what time it is in Iran. But it must be 11:24 at night. According to what Google shows me, it's 11:24 in Iran. So the 21st is about to end, and with this, the ceasefire ultimatum will be over. An ultimatum stating that the blockade conditions imposed by the United States will become even harsher. But not only that, there are already movements that could indicate that the ceasefire may end and attacks may follow. A source close to the matter reportedly confirmed to the AFP news agency that a U.S. delegation was scheduled to depart for Islamabad. But it was learned that J.D. Vance, whose trip to Islamabad was cancelled for about the third time, didn't end up going. Why? Because the Iranians simply didn't even show up at the negotiating table in Pakistan. There are currently no chances for negotiation with Iran. They aren't interested in negotiating. The United States had to cancel the trip. The goal of the talks is to put an end to the conflict in the Middle East that broke out on February 28th when the attacks began. Far from seeking an end, the ultimatum, which expires today, Washington time, could possibly be extended for a few more hours, maybe even until tomorrow. We'll see, but at least according to the information, the final detail was that the ultimatum ended today. We will not accept negotiations under the shadow of threats, and in the last 2 weeks we have been preparing to show new cards on the battlefield. This is what the President of the Parliament says. We talked about this yesterday. Mohammed Baker Kalibaf basically says or warns that he has other cards that could attack and that could well be shown. Yesterday they showed a map in which they said this. Let's go to this area. They said they had several targets, among them closing this other one. Straight. Yes, also, well, blocking the passage to the canal. That's obviously to the Strait, to the Red Sea, and so on. I mean, besides the closure and the attack on everything related to oil and gas from the Gulf countries, that's at least a warning that comes up again. The Gulf countries are essentially being held hostage. Iran and the United States have had very tough rhetoric, but with zero chances of negotiation, at least for now. Today we also showed in a previous broadcast the message given by the representative of the Supreme Leader, Mojtaba Hamani, where he basically said, well, that until they accept that Iran won, that Iran has the upper hand, let's say, then they are not going to negotiate. In other words, very heated rhetoric, obviously, and zero chances of negotiation, at least for now. Meanwhile, well, several reactions that seem interesting to me right off the bat. Let's move on to another point that also draws attention today. Regarding this topic, right? The Vice President of the United States is reportedly in Washington for now. The uncertainty increases since if he's in Washington at this time, it means there won't be any negotiations involving J.D. Vance. The second round of negotiations that was supposed to take place today simply won't happen. It won't take place. According to reports at 3 in the morning on Wednesday, it's 11:24. We didn't say 11:30. It's not 11:30. Yes, Let's see if the time updates again to see how many hours are left until the end. 11:30. If it's only 11:30 at night in Iran and it's at 3 in the morning on Wednesday. Or that 11 is 2:30, 1:30, 2:30, 3:30. So more or less about 4 hours. In about 4 more hours, the ceasefire will end. It's not at 12 noon for them, but at 3 in the morning for them. That's when it ends. 4 hours left for the ceasefire. The big question is whether the war will start immediately or if they'll still give a chance for another dialogue, a new ultimatum, or maybe a new time for an extended ceasefire, let's say. 4 hours of tension, and of course we'll be here updating throughout the day as things develop. Yesterday we showed some of the maps of where the US military is repositioning. Clearly you can see movement with the thought that maybe the ceasefire will end soon. That too. Well, we've already been talking about it here. Let's move on to other important details, but we'll be live. Israel, by the way, is accusing Hezbollah of violating the ceasefire in Lebanon by launching rockets toward Israel. Pay attention to that issue. Basically, maybe this is already the beginning, right? Because at the end of the day, they are also part of the ceasefire. Well, let's look at the map, right? Let's see how it is. But as you all know, Israel in the north borders Lebanon in this area, and from here, from the south, rockets were fired toward Israel. The Israeli army stated that the terrorist group is trying to blatantly break the truce that has been in place with IDF troops in the south of Lebanon. And there are also accusations against Donald Trump of having violated the ceasefire. There are accusations from the Iranians toward Donald Trump of having violated the ceasefire. We know that everyone accuses each other, everyone is blaming everyone else for breaking the ceasefire. Basically, so that's how we're ending the day, not just today, but the ceasefire situation. We're still gonna wait these 4 hours out anyway. It's 2 in the afternoon here in Mexico, in northeastern Mexico, here on Mexico City time. So the update about what happened with that ceasefire would be at 6 in the evening. Let's see what happens. Obviously, we'll be giving you all the details here. Let's move on to other important information. Greetings to Blanca Barceló, to Carmela, to Carmen. To Carmen. Greetings, Carmen. Greetings also to Jesus Nova's father. How have you been? Great. That's why that community. Thank you to everyone in the chat for liking. Well, let's move on to other important matters. Let's go to other details. No. Notice that there are more reports coming out about the investigation being conducted by the FBI into the deaths and disappearances of several scientists in the United States. No, according to other officials responsible for enforcing the law, they say they are leading to ensure the law is enforced. Into how these cases should have been reviewed, because it seems that some of those cases simply weren't taken seriously. They are also leading an investigation to find not only what happened with these people, but also the connections between the people being investigated. Among the cases, there are 11 scientists, but some of them are employees, missing or deceased, who worked in highly sensitive nuclear technology or space technology laboratories. The statement that was issued today, April 21st, today Tuesday, the statement says the following: it is confirmed that the FBI is leading the, because it wasn't known if they were going to lead or if they were just going to investigate for a short period of time, right? But they say they are now leading the investigation for sure. They say they are now leading the search for connections among the missing and deceased scientists. We are collaborating, they say, with the Department of Energy, also with the Department of Defense at the Pentagon, and with state and local law enforcement partners in those areas. However, those who have been closely involved in those investigations say the cases are very different from one another. Yes, according to them, there still aren't clear links between them, meaning they still don't see it as a whole, but rather everything is still seen as separate. President Trump said a few days ago that he left a meeting. You remember that from last week? He left a meeting where they had talked about the topic. He said at the time, I just came out of a meeting about the topic, so it's something pretty serious, Trump told reporters. I think it was last Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. Trump said, hopefully it's just a coincidence, but some were very important people and we'll investigate. Obviously, as I told you, a lot of theories have come up, right? Some of them worked at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, others worked at Los Alamos National Laboratory, and so on, right? Retired General William Axland, who is maybe one of the most high-profile cases, right? The one who has this silver alert, right? It's this man over there in Bernalillo County, right? In New Mexico. By the way, I send my regards to the community over there. Thank you very much to everyone in the community who is with us over there. They have even been sending us information about how this alert appears on the streets and in some places. Well, just saying. He is a 68-year-old retired Air Force Major General who has been missing since February. He's likely the most recent case, which draws attention, especially given this person's experience. How are you, Cebolita? Santiago, how have you been? Greetings to everyone in the community who is joining us. Great, thank you very much for your comments. Max Land's disappearance has sparked much speculation. This is about cases that are supposedly being investigated at his base or the one he was at. The research laboratory at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. They claim that he is one of 4 current and former employees of sensitive facilities who have disappeared in New Mexico alone in the past year. I mean, in the last 365 days, that's, well, so about 4 employees from that area have disappeared in New Mexico. The FBI spokesperson Bing Williamson said that the matter is a developing situation. The FBI is aware and is providing all the requested assistance, so overall, they say we were not the lead agency on the case, but now we are going to take the lead. Director Kash Patel also hinted on Sunday that we have some big problems. Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, is facing some serious issues. Huge, really huge. You realize he's a rock star, he's always traveling, he's always on the move, but he's got a lot going on. There are some really tough issues, so much so that they've almost reached the door of the hotel where he stays, where he usually stays in different places, because sometimes he doesn't answer for hours and hours and hours just lying there. And if he's around, but honestly, I don't see him lasting much longer. He's not in his position, but, well, that's another story. He's not there, it's really tough, I don't know what's going on. He's super paranoid, he thinks they're going to fire him soon. Donald Trump has been cleaning house in many areas of the government, and he's one of the most visible ones who could be next. There were also statements made to CBS about this. The spokesperson for the National Nuclear Security Administration was the one who spoke. NNSA. It's part of the Department of Energy. He said they're also investigating. They claim that these events could indeed be related. At least this agency thinks so. The NNSA is aware of reports related to employees at our laboratories, plants, and facilities, and this investigation is ongoing. Officials who are currently in office, but also others who are no longer in office, they have acknowledged that the pattern is truly surprising. When they review the data, noting the time period and positions held, they say, "This is really strange, isn't it?" People simply say, well, they could also lose their lives, they could also go missing. We know that, but when you see that they all have a pattern, well, that's what draws attention. Some of them at least show a clear pattern. The facilities in question employ around 20,000 people, many of whom work in administrative and support roles and don't necessarily have access to classified information. They want to rule that out as well, right? Who really had access to classified information and who didn't. And that way determine how vital those cases are. The cases of deaths and missing persons are currently scattered across many states, being investigated separately. If connections are found, this will change the course of this investigation. Scott Rocker himself, Vice President of Nuclear Materials Security at the Nuclear Threat Initiative, has been working on nuclear security issues for the U.S. government for 15 years. If you were to think, he says, of a foreign adversary, Iran might be the first that comes to mind, he says. He says, but we are not like Iran, and we have thousands of scientists, we have a solid infrastructure, so Iran could not achieve any strategic benefit. Eliminating 10 or 20 of our nuclear scientists, as tragic as the individual deaths may be, he assured that there are a very large number of scientists like that and that it really doesn't cause them a major problem if that were the case. That's a little bit of what's happening. Let's move on to another topic, by the way, because we had already mentioned the alerts that were in place for the United States. Well, there's a new alert due to weather, due to extreme weather for 8 states in the United States. Let's get into the details. Well, there's a report from U.S. meteorologists stating that 8 states are under alert for potential giant hail and tornadoes. According to the reports, 8 states would be key in this problem, and look, what we're seeing here is today's forecast for the next 7 days. Look, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, and day 7. That's as far as it goes. So as not to get too far ahead, you can see the amount of water accumulation in the United States is going to be surprising, especially in this area, although also for California, which is good because it helps prevent fires and all that, right? Where it's going to be very dry is in this area, which by the way is at risk for fires. New Mexico, Arizona, mainly Southern California, also Chihuahua, Baja California, Sonora. So this whole area has a significant risk of fires because there's a lack of water in this region. You can see it throughout the entire week. It doesn't rain much in Mexico, does it? A little bit in the west, more in the south and central south. Not much in the southeast, and in general just a little rain from today through next Tuesday. Yes, Tuesday, I think the 28th if I'm not mistaken, yes. So well, what's going to happen in this whole area? No, well, surely what they report as the greatest risk is not today, nor tomorrow. It's from the 23rd to the 25th. That's the most intense part. Yes, right now we're going to mention which states are at the highest risk. But pay attention to that. Remember it well. April 23rd to 25th is the stretch from Texas to Minnesota with the toughest conditions, at least in these coming days. That's the most critical moment. 23rd to 25th, 23rd, 24th, 25th. Yes. A series of weather systems. That's it. Located in the east, well, moving forward, let's say, in what is expected. Hail up to 7.6 centimeters according to what NOAA itself says, and also the NWS, which is the National Weather Service, or the National Weather Service. The weather event mainly affects the following states. That includes Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, Nebraska, Minnesota, Missouri, Illinois, and Wisconsin. Those are the 8 states that from April 23rd to 25th will have the alert I mentioned. Hail, mostly rain. Look, the winds could reach up to 137 kilometers per hour. That's 85 miles, which is a Category 1. In other words, the level of a Category 1 hurricane. Those winds, well, we're also going to see them here on the map, right? Also so we can see what those gusts will be like in the coming days. If we look right now, the strongest winds are the typical Santa Ana winds over there between Nevada, California and Baja California in Mexico, right? Or California, Nevada, Baja California, this area where the typical Santa Ana winds occur, which are strong winds. But if we move forward, you can see this phenomenon starting tomorrow, Wednesday, April 22nd. We're going to see this phenomenon become quite intense. After the 23rd, the phenomenon will move through the center of the United States and it will gradually dissipate on the 24th. On the 23rd, it moves toward the south, but toward the southwest. And then on the 26th, this phenomenon really intensifies, and that's when it becomes more intense. Basically, it starts from Chihuahua, Texas, and goes all the way up to Illinois. I mean, I also see other states here, for example, New Mexico, which is also seeing intense conditions. In terms of winds, maybe not so much humidity, but yes, in terms of winds, this whole corridor is going to be really intense, let's say Tornado Alley. The risk is that, well, from now until Friday, a series of phenomena will be moving along, advancing through the southern United States. For example, next week after the weekend, we're also going to see strong winds in Mexico, but in general, this whole area is going to have a lot of activity. Where will the thunderstorms be? Since we're already talking about it, let's see which areas will also have this problem so you can take this situation into account as well. I mean, if you are in that area of the United States, keep in mind where the thunderstorm is going. To keep watching it or to show it to your family, your friends. Let's see what protocols you need to follow during a thunderstorm, like turning off electronic devices, not being near windows, not touching them. If you have a metal faucet, you shouldn't touch it. For example, the sink or anything related to bathing. In theory, you shouldn't touch them. That's one of the usual recommendations. Thunderstorms are going to spread in the following way. Let's see if we can see it on the screen. Look, that's tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. You can already start to see this line of thunderstorms on the 24th. There it is. They're already spreading from the central area toward the east, with thunderstorms moving that way, even toward Mexico. Look, there it is. Also toward the southern states of the United States. You can see how there will be storms every day. Practically, there will be areas with thunderstorms during the day. This one is very strong. This one's for Monday. A strong thunderstorm is forecasted around there. Well, in general, you can see during these days that this area is going to have the most storms. Part of Mexico will also have them. In fact, yesterday we had a small storm, but with hail, so we had to take cover. We were already out on the street. We shared the images yesterday, but if you missed them, they're on Twitter. I shared a little bit of the video there, although I recorded a lot more. We were stuck in traffic and the hail felt like someone was throwing rocks, right? And not small ones, but rocks. It didn't sound like popcorn popping. It was non-stop, 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 and the sound was really intense. At one point, we went into a shopping mall with a roof, had coffee while waiting, and then continued. It took about 15 minutes. More or less, we were out on the street for about half of it, and inside for the other half. But anyway, we're probably going to see a lot of these storms in the United States, in the states I already mentioned, those 8 states I talked about. Besides this, tornadoes are expected. Weather authorities say this area is expected to see a series of tornadoes this week, and they are confirming that there may be fallen trees and power lines mainly in the following places. Illinois, Wisconsin, and Missouri are the 3 states where they think there will be more tornadoes. It's not the most complicated area, let's say, but the 8 states I mentioned also have a chance of being affected. There are also other areas, for example in Kansas City or down in Wichita, that are also under a severe storm forecast. That's what they are saying. And well then, that's probably the most interesting part. And about the winds, 137 kilometers per hour is no joke, so pay attention, friends who live over there. Last week, just so we keep this in mind, last week 70 tornadoes were confirmed throughout that whole corridor, that whole tornado alley. There were 70 tornadoes last week. Most of them, fortunately, were in uninhabited areas and there were no problems, but 70 were confirmed. Don't feed a mouse. Some tornadoes remain unconfirmed because they occurred in uninhabited areas. But 70 tornadoes were confirmed in places like Rockford, Illinois, Ringo, Wisconsin, among many other states that reported tornadoes with, let's say, established facts, as they say. Well, let's move on to the comments. How are you? J. Frick Fricarte Taco says, well, yes, he might have tacos. Possibly. Let's see. Diablo 0852. How have you been? Greetings. Good to see you. How's it going? Who else is around? Hi. D. Greetings. Greetings. How have you been? Thank you very much for your comment. Hi there. Eliseo. How's it going? Jose Zarate. Cebolla. Santiago. And the whole community. Well, everyone who's on the live stream, thank you very much for joining us for a little while. This brief news update, a big greeting to the whole community, and well, we keep paying attention, right? We keep paying attention to what's happening in the world, right? Grateful to the whole community. And look, there are 4 hours left until 6 in the evening. We are going to stay alert to see if before or during these 4 hours, the end of the ceasefire is confirmed or if it gets extended for a longer time, right? But it seems like this is going to end, the ceasefire will be over, and in this case, I guess the conflict could be reactivated. That's the most serious possibility, especially because the conflict could be extended much further. When you see that, well, today the spokesperson, the representative of Ali Jamina, of Mojtaba Jamina, was saying, and he said that until they acknowledge their defeat, and that the United States should acknowledge its defeat to Iran, just imagine, then they would negotiate, right? He says, I'm the Chavorruco. I'm just on my sister's profile. Very good. You're on another account, Chavorruco. How have you been? Very good. Great to see you here. Let's move on to other topics now. We'll return soon with more world updates and we'll keep updating all day. Thank you. Please share and like. See you later. Goodbye. So, Patricia from Puebla. Well, I have to say goodbye now. See you later.